सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So yesterday we saw about the life of Adi Shankaracharya ji till he goes and meets his guru Govinda Bhagavat Pada. So when he goes and meets his guru, he stays there, he learns from the guru, and it is said by the age of 12 he starts writing the commentaries. The guru actually is very pleased when he reads the commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam, and then he actually asks that what is it that you want to do? And Shankaracharya ji says, I want to be here, sit here, absorbed in the state of bliss. So the guru reminds him that your mission, your purpose for which you have come here has to get accomplished, and hence you will have to take this knowledge to the people. So this is one of the very important aspects of our culture, is where the great masters have taken up the role of a missionary, where they leave their quietude, their solitude, and they come down, they share the knowledge with the people and make it available to people in the language in which they can understand, in the level in which they can understand. And it is a lot of sacrifice that this requires. Because to come into the realm of action, and one has to work hard, and there will be a lot of opposition, there will be a lot of resistance, not only from society, not only from the people who feel threatened because their monopoly on the knowledge goes, but also there will be barriers, because spiritual evolution doesn't happen very fast. There are subjective barriers, there are subjective difficulties and challenges, and those have to be overcome by sadhana. So a lot of patience, compassion, persistence is required and constant effort, purushartha is required. So somebody has to, if somebody has to be guided, that's a lot of responsibility. And here is Adi Shankaracharya ji bringing the knowledge to the masses. These are called missionary masters, like Bhagwan Vedavyasa. What is the need of that society at that time is understood by them, and they bring back the values, the essence of Sanatana Dharma, they bring back to the masses, and that is called cultural revival. So the spirit remains the same. Externality, in fact, they may adapt also. So like Bhagwan Vedavyasa, he compiled the Vedas. The knowledge was in the oral tradition till he brought out the compilations. Because he felt that the compilations would be necessary. The human mind is becoming grosser and grosser. And so he brought it down as a written format. Now that oral tradition was replaced by the written. Even today there are people who follow that oral tradition, but very few. One of the great saints was Swami Gangeshwaranand Ji Maharaj. who was born blind, but he learned the entire Vedas, listening and remembering. And then he used to chant, and Gangeshwarananji's trust is printing the Vedas. So if you see in Pavai Ashram, if you see in Siddhabari, in CIF, in many other ashrams across the world, of many other organizations and even individuals, people get, they get this book, the Veda printed by them, and they keep it, they worship it. So the oral tradition is followed. But he replaced, Vedavyasji replaced, because not everybody will be able to follow that, and eventually we will lose the entire knowledge itself. So to preserve that culture and that knowledge, certain adaptations are done. Like Gurudev came and spoke in the English language so that people could understand. And when Sanskrit has been removed from the education system by the British, people are not aware of that language, and the culture is written in that language. The principles are written in that language. So the adaptations are done. So in the same way, Shankaracharya also did a lot of adaptations. So his missionary life begins now. The purpose of the missionary life is this, that same principle of Advait Vedanta, that is the essence of Sanatana Dharma. If we remove Advait Vedanta from our culture, all practices that we do will seem hollow. We will not know the deeper significance why we do certain things. And if we remove that completely, Advait Vedanta, then it will only look like a bundle of rites, rituals, and certain practices. And the reason for it also we will not know. So Advait Vedanta forms the very heart of Sanatana Dharma. Our whole Sanatana Dharma, Gurudev used to say, is based on the Upanishad knowledge. The knowledge of the Upanishads, the knowledge of oneness of Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. So everything is centered around that, how to prepare oneself for that knowledge, that oneness, absolute oneness. So that is the knowledge which Shankaracharya ji revived in this whole country. So now how did he do that? He had different plans that he took up. So his guru told him that he must go to Kashi Vishwanath and pray to the Lord there, and he would get further guidance from there. So Shankaracharya sets out with his disciples and he goes and stays at Kashi, near that very famous Vishwanath temple on the Manikarnika Ghat. He takes up an abode and he stays there, and he spends some time doing sadhana, meditation, teaching people. Many pandits used to come, scholars used to come. Many people who came to him, one of them was a person from the south, and his name is Sanandana. So when Shankaracharya ji saw him, he was across the banks of the river. He called out to him. He was actually his friend from his childhood, and he had met him much later now. So he was very, very happy, and he called out to him, and he gave him sannyas also. And he became one of the disciples of Shankaracharya ji. And this is the same person who is called Padmapada. So the power of faith we see in his life. That once he was across the river and Shankaracharya ji just called him, come here. So he said, he just heard the order of his teacher and he just started walking. He didn't even bother that there is a river in between. Then every place where he kept his foot, there was a lotus which came up. And this incident is what gave him the name Padmapada. So he met Padmapada, he met his first disciple there in Kashi. And a very famous incident where once when he goes to um, the banks of, after taking bath in the Gangaji, when he's coming back in Varanasi, what he finds that there is a Chandala who is coming opposite. The lane is very narrow, and there's a Chandala who is coming opposite with the dogs. And Chandala is supposed to be the worst of the human beings, who eats even a dog, meaning an animal who is as faithful as a dog. Chandala goes to the extent of killing that animal and eating that animal also. So it's considered the lowest category. So as Chandala was coming in front of him, Shankaracharya says, Gacha, Gacha, go, go. And the Chandala asks him that what should go from what? Annamayad Annamayam Athava Chaitanyameva Chaitanyad. He Dvijavara Duri Kartum Vanchasi Kim Bruhi Gacha Gacheti. And you know what do you want to move? What should move? This body which is made up of food and your body which is made up of food, should this body, this entire world is made up of food, Annamaya, kosher, 5 elements. This is how can 5 elements move from 5 elements? So he says Annamaya Annamayam, Athava Chaitanyameva Chaitanya, or you want consciousness to move. But there is one pure consciousness which is all pervasive. What should move? That cannot move anywhere. It is infinite. The moment he hears this, Shankaracharya realizes his mistake. He says, oh, what did I do? And instantly he composes the Manisha Panchakam. So the Chandala gives an example also. He says the reflection of the sun, the sun illumines the Ganga water as well as the gutter water in the same way. There is no difference for the sun. Meaning the consciousness in a person is the same no matter what is the externality. What the role that person is playing. So Shankaracharya realizes his mistake and he composes this beautiful composition, Manisha Panchakam. And that is where every line there he ends with Chandalostu Satudvijostu Guru Rityesha Manisha Mama. He may be a Chandala or he may be a Brahmana, whoever it is. I consider that person as my Guru who has established himself in this pure consciousness, in the vision of oneness. So at the end of that composition, he prostrates to the Chandala, and that's where Lord Shiva appears. So it was Bhagavan Shiva who was there in that form, and Lord Shiva then blesses him and he tells him that we have to eradicate the ignorance and revive this Sanatan Dharma, remove all these false notions, superimpositions and wrong ideologies, and start establishing the glory of knowledge of the oneness, vision of oneness. So having got blessings from Lord Shiva, Shankaracharya then decides that I will go to Badrinath. And he with some of his followers, he goes to Badrinath, and his plan is that he wants to write commentaries. You see, this is the first plan of Shankaracharya was to write commentaries on the Prasthanatraya. So he goes to Badrinath, he stays there. The king of Jyotirdham, that time, that whole place is called Jyotirdham. Even today we call Joshi Math. Is Jyotirdham, that area. The king of Badrinath, of that Jyotirdham, is very inspired that Shankaracharya is coming here, and he makes all the arrangements and they receive him, welcome him, and he starts staying at Badrikashram. So the idol there also of Badri Narayan Bhagwan, which is there in the temple today, that idol also, it is said that Shankaracharya ji recovered that idol of Bhagwan Vishnu from the Narad Kund there, from the Alaknanda river. And he did the Jeernodhar of that temple, reinstalled the idol there, and look at his vision. He appointed a Nambudri from Kerala in Badrinath to do the daily ritual. So the Raval there, even today the tradition is followed that the Raval, the main priest there, is a Nambudri from Kerala. And in Rameshwaram, he put a priest from the north. So this divide of north and the south must have been existing even at that time, because Sanskrit and Tamil. So the division must have been there psychologically also. So he wanted to break that we are one country, one nation. So he did this national integration. One of his ways was this, that he wanted people to stay there, go there, stay in the north, people from north come and stay in the south, and see that in this whole country, no matter what type of culture we follow, different cultures we follow in terms of the language and the food and certain practices, but the essence remains the same. And that is a Vedic culture which unites us. So the diversity may have been there in this country and is still there in the country, but what unites us is culturally we are one. The same practices, culturally the vision that we have is the same. And that vision has not declined. So he wanted to re-establish that vision of oneness. So he did that at Badrinath. And he instructed the king that this is the tradition that has to be kept up and followed, and hence even today that tradition is followed there. So he stayed there for 4 years, and it is said that he wrote commentaries on 15 books at one place, and those are Brahma Sutras, the 12 Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Sanat Sujatiya. So in that Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, 12 Upanishads, these are called the Prasthanatraya. And the entire vision of Advait Vedanta is there in these 12 books, and Shankaracharyaji's commentary on that is the authority. So 4 years having stayed there, so Badrinath that way is a very, very important dham for all of us, because Vyasa Gufa also is there. So Vyasa Bhagwan wrote Mahabharata sitting there. He wrote, matlab he dictated it to Lord Ganesha. So there's Ganesh Gufa, there's Vyasa Gufa. Shankaracharya ji wrote his commentaries there. Puja Gurudev decided to take sannyas there. When he went around the country when he went around for the Char Dham Yatra, he concluded at Badrinath. And then he stayed there for 60 days. He did his Om Namah Shivaya Purascharan Anushthan he did. And at the end of that, he decided that yes, this is my path and I'm going to take sannyas. So that place has a lot of significance, a lot of missionary importance also. There, Shankaracharya ji not only used to write commentaries, again he used to take classes and meet various religious people, and the king of Badrinath, king of Jyotirdham would keep coming, learning from Shankaracharya ji. Once he finished writing these commentaries, now he wanted to come down and share this knowledge. Remember, he was 12 years old. Now 4 years, he's become 16. And his life is supposed to be this much, 16 years. So he starts coming down, he comes to Kedarnath, and then he comes to Uttarkashi also, and he has spent some time in Kedarnath, in Uttarkashi. It is at that time I'm not sure which place exactly, may not be in Uttarkashi, but it is at that time that he meets one old Brahmana who used to come to him, and he would have discussion with Shankaracharya on the commentaries that he has written. And this discussion went on 10 days almost. So it is said that Padmapada one day told Shankaracharya ji that this Brahmana does not appear to be an ordinary person. He is someone different. So you must ask him, please request him to tell us who is he. And that is when Shankaracharya ji, the next day when the discussion is happening, Brahmana is very pleased, and he actually congratulates Shankaracharya ji that I am very, very happy that you are spreading this knowledge of Advaita Vedanta so beautifully. And Shankaracharya ji requests him that please reveal who are you, what is your identity. And that is when the Brahmana reveals his identity, that he is Bhagwan Vedavyasa himself. And Shankaracharya ji is so happy and pleased that he had the fortune of meeting Bhagwan Vedavyasa himself, on whose Brahma Sutras he has written commentary. So Bhagwan Vedavyasa had actually come to discuss with him on Brahma Sutras. And they had long discussions on Brahma Sutra. Finally, he was very happy that Shankaracharya ji has the vision of what Brahma Sutra speaks about. The vision of oneness is there. And not only the vision is there, the ability to present that also in the manner in which it is there in the Shastra in a systematic way is there. So Vedavyas ji, he blesses Shankaracharya ji that this knowledge must go to the masses, and you are the right instrument for it. So 16 more years he blesses him with. So that is how Shankaracharya ji lived for 32 years. He was destined for only 16 years as an incarnation. But then he went on to live for 32 years because Vedavyas ji extended his lifetime. And Bhagwan Vedavyasa tells him to go and meet the champion of rituals, and that is Kumarila Bhatta. So Shankaracharya ji, when he is given that command, he goes. This Kumarila Bhatta is supposed to be a great Karma Kandi, Purva Mimamsa it is. And that time, lot of ritualists were there who believed that the highest state one can achieve is to go to heaven, and the rituals are the means to do that. Kumarila Bhatta, interestingly, he is a very great scholar, and he wanted to actually ensure that the Hindu culture remains integrated, because he was very pained to see a lot of people changing into Buddhism, and the influence that Buddhism had, the aggressive influence that Buddhism had, where there constantly people were converting into Hinduism, into Buddhism. So he actually wanted to preserve this culture. So he disguised himself as a Buddhist monk and he joined their monastery to understand what the Buddhist philosophy is, because they will not accept him directly. So to understand what the Buddhistic philosophy is, he went disguised and he joined them, and he learned. Almost at the fag end, where he has learned almost everything, his identity gets disclosed, that he is not a Buddhist. Because they find him doing rituals. So the guru understands, they find that, he is not a Buddhist, he is somebody in disguise. So as a punishment, they want to throw him up from the mountain. And it is said at that time, Kumarila Bhatta thinks in his mind that if what is written in the Vedas is true, and that Veda will, when it is said Dharma Rakshati Rakshitaha, if it is a fact that Vedas will protect me, so he says, if what is written in the knowledge in the Vedas is true, then let the Vedas protect me today. With that faith, he is fearless. And when they push him, he of course gets injured, he falls down, but he does not die, he is saved. What happens is only one eye of his he loses. And that also he loses not because of anything else, because he had that little doubt that if what is written in the Vedas is true, then let the Vedas protect me. Then he also feels that I did not have full faith in the Veda, as well as I have done Guru Droha. So he does not want to live. So as a Prayaschitta, he wanted to do what is called as Tushanala. Tushanala means the haystack. A haystack is made, a huge haystack is made, and he sits on that, and the haystack is given fire. And so with that fire, self-immolation will happen. So Kumarila Bhatta is on that haystack. He's sitting there, the fire has been lit. Shankaracharya comes to him at that time, and he wants to discuss with him, because a lot of people are followers. Karmakandis were there, he was one of the champions of rituals. But now he is on the haystack, and he tells him, I cannot do this discussion right now, but you can go and meet my student, Mandana Mishra. So before Shankaracharya ji goes, he requests Shankaracharya ji that please chant the Taraka mantra, Ram Nam, or Mrityunjay mantra, a Taraka mantra. What exactly the Taraka mantra is that he chanted, that is not known. But he tells Shankaracharya ji that please chant the Tarak mantra so that he can meet his end properly. And so Shankaracharya ji did the chanting, and finally Kumarila Bhatta gave up his body. Now Shankaracharya ji doesn't know where is his disciple Mandana Mishra. So when he asks around, they tell him that Mandana Mishra, you go to such and such place, you will find him in Maheshmati, again on the banks of river Narmada. So there Mandana Mishra will be there. So when he reaches there, people tell him how to find which is his house. So they tell him that house around which even the parrots, they recite the Vedic mantras for rituals. That house is the house of Mandana Mishra. So he goes there. Shankaracharya ji meets Mandana Mishra, gives him the whole background, and he says that I want to have a discussion with you. I have not come here for Anna Bhiksha, I have come here for the Jnana Bhiksha, and we must have these conversations. So the tradition in the country has always been that, where discussions happen, open debates happen, where it is not a tradition of conformity, that somebody has said it and one has to just follow it. It's a tradition of discussion, and it's an open discussion. There are no rigidities in that. Objections can be raised, counter objections can be raised, solutions are found out. And ultimately, when a person is convinced that the opponent's viewpoint is acceptable, the person not only accepts defeat, but also takes up that standpoint because intellectually one has found that more inspiring and appealing, and transforms to that way of thinking and living. So this is one of the earliest debates that Shankaracharya ji had. Then he went across the whole country doing these debates and inspiring people with the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. And when the debates get over, when people accept the doctrine of Vedanta, then they start converting to that. They start living by those values. This was our culture, that through that open-mindedness, a debate is not done for the sake of debate. A debate is not done to prove the opponent wrong, or nor a debate is done to prove one's own supremacy. That way of life, which is found to be more logical, appealing, convincing, one is very open to that inquiry into the truth, and then one adapts it. So with Mandana Mishra, this debate goes on. Both of them are given a garland. And both of them, before the debate starts, the garland is there on both of them, and the purpose of that garland is very nice. So for the debate, the judge is supposed to be the wife of Mandana Mishra. Her name is Ubhay Bharati. Why is her name Ubhay Bharati? Bharati means, her name is actually Bharati. But she not only had learned the Vedas and the knowledge she got in her grahastha, in her mother's house, after getting married, when she comes here also she gets she continues her knowledge and she learns. So from both the places she has got knowledge. That is another thing to tell us, that women, it was not that they are denied knowledge. Even at the time of Shankaracharya ji, even after marriage, she continued to do her study and continued to gain knowledge there. So she is called Ubhay Bharati. She becomes the judge. And Shankaracharya ji has no problem. He doesn't say that, how can you be the judge? You are the opponent's wife. You will be partial. Nothing. Ubhay Bharati is the judge there. She is sitting and the discussion is happening. And the garland is also put on both of them to ensure that whoever wins, that person's garland will remain fresh. And whoever loses from the garland, you will find out that this person has lost now. So both these were happening. Ubhay Bharati was also the judge and the garland was also put up. So there was a lot of impartiality in this whole discussion. So the discussion went on. So he said it went on for 18 days, and ultimately the garland around Mandana Mishra fades. So one of the names of Mandana Mishra also is Vishwarupa. So Vishwarupa is defeated, and so he has to actually take up to the way of Advaita Vedanta. And he is so convinced that he actually wants to take up sannyas straight away. But his wife Ubhay Bharati says, no, you have only defeated my husband. I am his better half. So you have to have a discussion with me also. You just see that openness of that culture and society at that time, that the knowledge is respected, not the gender. There's no gender bias there. Shankaracharya doesn't say that, I am not going to discuss with you. After all, you are just a woman. Nothing. In fact, you see something else only happens. He accepts that, yes, I will have a discussion with you. And in the course of discussion, Ubhay Bharati asks him a question in the art of making love. And Shankaracharya ji says, I am a brahmachari and I do not know this, but you have to give me 1 month's time and I will gain the knowledge and I will come back. So it is said that Shankaracharya ji takes his time. Ubhay Bharati says okay, and he goes into a forest. There he finds that there is a king who is lying dead. Shankaracharya ji tells his disciples that I am going to leave my body. You have to preserve this body. I will get into the body of the king and I will understand this whole thing and I will come back. Till then, preserve the body. This is called Parakaya Pravesha. He leaves his body at will consciously and then he goes into the body of the king. Because Shankaracharya has the yogic knowledge. So he goes into that body of the king, goes back to his kingdom. He finds that actually the king and the queens and everybody had gone there for a hunting expedition and they are lying unconscious there. So he wakes them up and with the queens he returns to the kingdom and there he lived the life of the king for some time, understood what he had to understand, and ultimately he left the body of the king and came back into his body, came back for the discussions, and he won in that discussions also. Ubhay Bharati actually manifests there as Saraswati Devi and blesses Shankaracharya ji to spread the knowledge of Advait Vedanta in a much more glorious way. Vishwarupa becomes a sannyasi. Shankaracharya ji gives him sannyas. Mandana Mishra, the one of the greatest karmakandis of that time, is transformed and he becomes his disciple. And sannyas is given to him and he becomes Sureshwaracharya. So remember yesterday we discussed about the place where the two frogs were given shelter by the snake. Shankaracharya ji remembers that place. So from Narmada he comes down to that place in his tours, and he establishes the first ashram, first matha there, which is the Sringeri Matha, Sringeri Sharda Math. And Sureshwaracharya ji is appointed as the first Shankaracharya of that math. So after this incident of Mandana Mishra and Ubhay Bharati, the portion of Shankaracharya ji's life now is called Shankara Digvijayam, because he travels across the country, all the four directions, and conducts debates, arguments with people, establishes the glory of Advait Vedanta, and by the next 16 years' time, single-handedly, Shankaracharya ji ensures that from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Rajasthan to the northeast, everywhere. In fact, that time the boundary is not just Rajasthan, it is much more earlier, much ahead. He single-handedly ensures that Advait Vedanta gets established, and Buddhism is almost, he sends it out of India. One person. So this, actually the whole life of Shankaracharya ji also, what we are discussing right now, we find from the Shankara Digvijayam. There are many versions of Shankara Digvijayam. One of the famous one is what is written by Vidyaranya Swami. So what we have discussed is based on that. So there are many incidents that happen in his Shankara Digvijayam. All the four directions when he goes and he. So first disciple we found is, one of the first is Padmapada Acharya. Then the second one is Sureshwaracharya. In his tours, when he goes to Gokarna, he finds there, you see that the divisions in Hindu culture, how many sects had happened. We find here that there was this place in Gokarna which is the stronghold of the Shaivites. And they argue with Shankaracharya over the supremacy of Shaivism, and he convinces them of the glory of Advait Vedanta. There are many sects in Vaishnavism, many sects in Hindu, in Shaivism also, Veer Shaivism, Kashmir Shaivism. Like there are many sects in both these. So what Shankaracharya ji does, he has worshipped the Lord there, Gokarneshwara. From there he goes to Mukambika. He defeats the Shaivites. He makes them realize that Shiva is not just the form there, but the Advaitic meaning of Shiva as pure consciousness. So he establishes the glory of Advait Vedanta even there. So they continue to practice Shaivism, but with the deeper understanding of the Vedantic meaning of what they are doing. From there he goes to Mukambika, and that's where he finds that there is a couple who comes to him, and they are very sad because they come with their son, and that son is almost 13 years old, and they tell him that this son of ours, we don't know what has happened to him. He has not spoken a word from his birth. He has not spoken one word, and he behaves very weirdly. Sometimes he starts laughing, sometimes he is in ecstasy, sometimes he just goes on sleeping. We don't know what is the problem. We have tried many things, but nothing seems to work. So we have brought him to you. Can you please help? Shankaracharya ji looks at the boy and he just asks him, Kastvam Shisho Kasya Kutosi Ganta, that, O child, who are you? To whom do you belong? Where are you headed? Kim nama petvam? Kim nama tetvam kuta agatosi? What is your name? From where have you come? When Shankaracharya ji asks this question, he understands that this is not an ordinary boy. That boy, what he answers is called Hastamalaka Stotram. So he starts saying that Naham Manushyo na Chadeva Yaksha na Brahmana Kshatriya Vaishya Shudraha na Brahmachari na Grihi Vanastaha Bhikshur na Chaham Nijabodha Rupa. And that composition is what after this is called as the Hastamalaka Stotram, where every line he ends with Sanityopalabdhi Swarupoham Atma. I am that ever available Atma, that is my true nature. So this is Hastamalaka. Shankaracharya ji gives him the name Hastamalaka because Amalaka means that Amla fruit and Hasta is the hand. So clear is the Amla fruit on the hand. That clear is the knowledge of this person that my nature is pure consciousness. And Shankaracharya ji tells the parents that he is not an ordinary person, he is a great yogi and there is a lot that has to be done through him. So please give me your son. And he gives him sannyas and he becomes Hastamalakacharya. So that is the third disciple of Shankaracharya ji. At Mukambika he gets the third disciple. And from there Mukambika is where he goes to Sringeri and he establishes the first matha. So 4 mathas he establishes in the 4 corners of the country. See, that is another vision that he has. He was not just a spiritual master, but he was a deeply patriotic person who wanted to bring about a revival of Hindu culture as well as integration of the country, because culture is what binds us. So in 4 different corners, one in Sringeri, he established the Sringeri Sharda Math, where he actually wanted to establish only a Sharda temple there and a few buildings around for the disciples to stay and to do sadhana there. But ultimately, the disciples and everybody get together and they decide that we must have a proper matha here. And Shankaracharya accepts, and then that's how the first matha comes up. The king there, Aditya Varma, that time plays a very crucial role, and he makes all the arrangements. And it is said that Shankaracharya ji, after that 4-year stay at Badrinath, the longest that he had stayed is in this place, in Sringeri. So a lot of devotees used to come to Shankaracharya ji there. Even the king of Ujjain, it is said that Sudhanva, he used to come, and he used to have discussions and learn from Shankaracharya ji. So for some time, Shankaracharya ji stayed there, and it is said that the Sri Chakra was inscribed by Shankaracharya ji, and that was placed there, and then the idol of Sharda Devi also has been established there by him. At that time, he gives them the knowledge of Upasana, that why even for an Advaitic student, Upasana is so important. So you see the great masters of Advaita Vedanta, though they revel in the supreme non-dual bliss, which is even beyond formless, absolute truth is beyond the formless also. And yet we find that these great masters establish idols. Why? Because the mind needs a support system to become pure, to become single-pointed. And as Gurudev would say, now the commentary that he wrote on the Gita, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, if you actually weigh the compositions that he has written for various deities, the Bhakti Stotra that he has written, Gurudev would say that more than 2/3 is on Bhakti. Commentaries only are 1/3. So even an Advaitic master like Shankaracharya ji, when he establishes idols, when he renovates the temples, because the culture needs that, the people need that. Very, very few people are those who can actually, who are fit for the worship of the formless, and in that also very few who can go beyond the formless also, in the absolute truth. So he establishes the Sringeri Sharda Math, he initiates the disciples into the Upasana and tells them that why this Upasana is important and how it is Sharda Devi herself who is sitting here. It is not just an idol. So when a yantra is established and the prana pratishtha is done of the deity there, then the master invokes that prana shakti. So the murti is no more just a murti. Prana has been invoked in that. So he does all that. And in fact, he tells the disciple that even when you have taken sannyas, you must still do the upasana. See, that's the beauty. You must continue to worship Sharda Devi, do the upasana, purify the mind, and then get established in Brahman. So it is at that time, it is said that Shankaracharya ji composed all these great works, and Vivek Chudamani is one of them. So Vivek Chudamani, Aparokshanubhuti, Atmabodh, Sarva Vedanta, Sara Sangraha, all these are composed by Shankaracharya ji at Sringeri. When he was staying at Sringeri, there was this person of, there was this person who used to serve him, who takes care of his daily needs, washing the clothes, utensils, all that. And that person was very devout. Giri is his name. So one day it so happens that all the sannyasis have assembled, they have gathered there, but Shankaracharya ji is not starting the class. So they ask him that, are you waiting for somebody, oh master? So Shankaracharya says, yes, I am waiting for Giri. And the disciples sitting there, they feel that, oh, he's just a menial worker. We are all sannyasis. We are sitting in front of him. We are great scholars. And we have to wait for him. That bhav comes into them, little bit of superiority comes into them. That day, Shankaracharya ji calls Giri and tells him, today you have to take the class. Giri is very devout. He says, whatever the master says, if he says I have to take the class, then he will do the needful. So in his mind, he has surrendered to Shankaracharya ji. And through him comes out the most beautiful Totakashtakam. 8 verses which glorify Shankaracharya ji, his life, his vision. And this is called Totakashtakam because it is written in Trotaka meter. Vidita Akhila Shastra Sudha Jaladhe Mahitopanishad Kathitartha Nidhe Hridaye Kalaye Vimalam Charanam Bhava Shankara Deshika Me Sharanam. Every line of that composition ends with this beautiful refrain, Bhava Shankara Deshika Me Sharanam. That may the great teacher Shankaracharya ji be my refuge. So 8 verses come out through this Giri, and all of them sitting there are stunned that how does he even know this? Because he is just a worker who doesn't even know Sanskrit. But the power of surrender, the power of being empty, and Shankaracharya ji there, he accepts him into the fold as a sannyasi. He gives him sannyas and he becomes Totakacharya. So these are 4 main disciples of Shankaracharya ji: Hastamalaka, Sureshwaracharya, Hastamalaka, Padmapada and Totakacharya. And each of them are given charge of one matha. So one matha is in Sringeri, one is in Dwarka, one is in Joshimath, which is the Jyotirdham near Badrinath, before Badrinath, and one is in Puri. In all the places Shankaracharya ji visited and established the temples, established the matha there, and appointed one person in charge and gave the custody of one Veda to each of the temples, each of the mathas. Their duty is to study the Veda, preserve that knowledge, propagate that knowledge, and make everyone live that lifestyle prescribed. And you see the mathas last even today. What was the real vision of Shankaracharya ji? Some of them are trying whatever the best to even live that. There may be challenges, there may be difficulties, but what is to be commended, what is to be admired is that the mathas which have been established 1200 years ago, if we consider him as 7th century, otherwise they are more than, suppose we say he's in 2500 years before, then for that much time the matha has survived. Onslaught of time, the matha has survived, the place, the knowledge, the traditions, the customs. So these 4 mathas he established. It is at that time that somebody tells him that his mother is not well. He remembers his promise and he goes to see his mother, and his mother is very happy that Shankaracharya ji has come. He finds her very weak, she has become very sick, and mother is very happy to see Shankaracharya ji after such a long time. It is said that he met his mother after 12 years. So imagine, 16 years he started doing the missionary work. He established the first matha by the age of 20 already. And at 20 years, his mother is passing away. He is there for the mother's last moments. he sings a hymn in praise of Lord Shiva, and it is said that Shiva Ganas, they come there to escort the soul of Shankaracharya's mother. And the mother gets very scared looking at the Shiva Ganas because they are like Bhuta Ganas. And then Shankaracharya remembers that, oh, my mother actually is a person who is devoted to Lord Vishnu. So then he composes something in the praise of Lord Vishnu, and that is where the Parshad or the messengers of Lord Vishnu, they come and they take the soul. What he composed is what we know as Shiva Bhujangam and Vishnu Bhujangam. Now the mother has left the body. Shankaracharya kept up his promise that when the mother needs, he will be there, and especially in the last moments. Now there is nobody else in the family. He does the last rites of his mother, and technically as a sannyasi he is not supposed to do the last rites. So in some places it is said that he actually removes his ochre clothes, takes up white clothes for that much time, and he does the Agni Samskar, and the Brahman Samaj there, the Brahmins, they outcast him. The orthodoxy rejects Shankaracharya, they outcast him completely, that you have broken rules and you have done a ritual. As a sannyasi, you are not supposed to do these rituals. But you see, Shankaracharya ji was a master who was following the spirit of the Vedic knowledge. He did not get stuck up only in blind following of rituals. What needed to be done at that particular time, he did it. And he did not bother whether he was accepted, not accepted in the society. So even a person of a mighty stature like Shankaracharya ji has had to face opposition from the orthodoxy. And what to talk about anybody else? So what is he up against? His own people. You see, the difficulty in cultural revival is that when we have to do the cultural revival, it is not somebody outside who has to get convinced. It is somebody who is a follower of our own culture, who sticks rigidly to that aspect and who does not follow the spirit of it, and who constantly opposes. That is the person one has to try and transform. So even when Gurudev came down, his first talk was, let us be Hindus. In a Hindu temple to a Hindu audience, a Hindu Swami is talking, and the topic he gives is, let us be Hindus. And throughout he kept telling, converting Hindus to Hinduism, that is the biggest challenge that he faced in his life. And same thing with him also, that there was a lot of opposition for him to bring this knowledge to the masses in English language. So for today, this is where we will stop. And the last part of his life, we will complete tomorrow. Any questions? You are welcome to ask.
If he's a realized person, so why does he come down even for a moment?
Sorry, your volume is not audible.
Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Swamiji, just wanted to know then, Shankaracharya ji, when he meets a Chandala, and he says, go away from there, if he's already established in Brahman, even for a moment, why does he come down? My understanding is a realized master never comes down from there.
So that's a fact that a realized master never yadgatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. He never comes back into body identification, but that is to make a person realize this fact that realization does not happen as one experience. Realization happens as a process where gradually the body identification goes, and then ultimately through a long practice of samadhi, person gets established. Till the person doesn't get absolutely established, it is possible that a person comes down to the level of the body, and it is in those weak moments when the body identification has risen, the person can lose the sight of Advait Vedantic vision. Not that Shankaracharya lost it, but that's a leela done by both of them, Lord Shiva and Shankaracharya, to make somebody realize that if a person like Shankaracharya himself can, for a few moments, identify with the body as I am a Brahmana and that is a Chandala, then what to talk about any other seeker, that how much more alert we have to be. It is only meant for that much. Technically, it is not possible that the master comes down to that level, because a person like Shankaracharya absolutely.
Hari Om Swamiji. Mathas are different from Pitams?
In some places they are same, in some they are different. So technical difference I will have to get back to you. But from what I understand, people use them interchangeably in many places. That's why they seem to be same. But Pitha is the establishment of a deity there. And Matha is built around the Pitha to take care of the organizational aspect. But I will get back to you about exact difference. This is what my understanding says right now, from what I know. So Sringeri Sharda.
Why I'm asking is the four. I visited Kashmir and I saw Matam there. Shankaracharya's Matam. I think Sharda Matam is there.
Sharda Pitha is there.
That is in Kashmir.
That is in Kashmir. That is called a Sarvagnya Pitha. That's why I'm saying where the deities will there, where the deity will be established. No, that deity will be called as a. But a matha is around that deity. The organizational aspect will be there, where people will take care of the organization, spreading the knowledge, running a pathshala, all that things. So tomorrow's session, you will, that Pitha is called Sarvagnya Pitha, and Shankaracharya ascends that Pitha. But I will get back to you exactly if there will be difference between Matha and Pitha, because there are lots of Pithas. Mathas will be comparatively lesser because they bring the organization structure into play. But we will discuss it tomorrow.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om.
This Matru Panchakam was also rendered by him, they say, at the end of when his mother gave up her body. That time, that 5 shlokas on mother's greatness of mother.
Possible. Lot of composition Shankaracharya ji has written. Sometimes it's very difficult. The list of composition itself is so long. 3 pages it takes to just write down the list. Okay, so we continue from now. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya
Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate.
Shanti Hari Om Hari Guru Hari Om.